Right, so lovely introductions, lovely to meet everybody. So today's session is all about climate change and climate action and why we should all care and how we can all get involved. So this is a partnership between the CAE, the Centre for African Entrepreneurship, and Renew Wales, and we are funded by the National Lottery Community Fund. As I said before, my name is Amna. I'm the CAE's youth engagement and influence worker. So any young people, just if anyone's interested in enterprise and youth work, just let me know. Right, Kim, over to you.
Yeah, so great to see everyone here. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. As I said, my name is Kim, and I am the Climate Action Champion at the CAE, so spearheading all climate action activities at the center. So Phil has briefly introduced himself, but I just wanted him to just say a little bit more about what he does, because Phil is amazing. He does a lot of work with regards to, climate change, climate action, climate justice, the environment. So Phil, can you just give us a little bit more of a background into yourself before we just jump into the session?
Yeah, sure. So I said earlier that I'm a freelance worker. I guess you could say an entrepreneur in some respects. But I work closely with a number of different organisations, particularly Swansea Environmental Forum, and I help to run some of its projects. Swansea Environmental Forum is a partnership that brings together a whole load of public sector organisations like the council and the health board and so on, and also the likes of universities, together with voluntary sector groups, whether it be campaigning groups or well-established bodies. I also work very closely with the council and other organisations on a wide range of different topics, really. The environment is quite a wide subject, isn't it? Clearly, at the moment, there are two really pressing overarching issues. One is you all be aware of the term climate emergency, and perhaps also of the ecological or nature emergency. And those two things, which totally interlink as well, are really focusing everybody's minds. One of the roles that I do play, which is the reason I've come into contact with the Centre for African Entrepreneurship in Swansea, is that I'm a local coordinator for a project, a lottery-funded project called Renew Wales, which has been around for quite a few years now. And the way that it operates is quite unique in that rather than having lots of core staff, it actually borrows staff from other organisations in different parts of right across Wales. So on the back of the work that I do with Swansea Environmental Forum and the Environment Centre in Swansea, I give a little bit of my time towards Renew Wales. And the work that I do with that is about helping community groups take action, do their bit in relation to climate and climate change and carbon reduction. And that's really why I've got involved with CAE and has led to this conversation today. Is that enough?
Yeah, perfect.
I could go on for days, really. But,
later. For now, that's great. Thanks so much, Phil. So as you said, he's been supporting us as well with this project, and just overall the whole aim of the project itself is to raise awareness and educate each other about the current climate crisis, as well as hopefully along the way we can inspire change in habits and just consideration of the environment in all our actions. So for this session, we'll just cover basically a bit of science behind climate change, so the greenhouse effect, as well as global warming, then how we know it's real. I think this is another important thing, because a lot of people do doubt that climate change is real. So we'll just go a bit into that, what climate change means for us, and the actions that we can take either as individuals or as a community. So next slide, please. So before we go in, let's just go around. So as it says, please hold up a number on your fingers, either 1 to 5, showing how confident you are about your understanding on climate change, as well as the actions that you can take. So 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. So we can just. Great. Let me see if I can see everyone. Okay. It's a whole range, I guess, ranging from 2 to 4, which is great because it's giving us somewhere to work from. Hopefully, by the end of the session, that number would have gone up. Amna, please do check for me as well, so that we do make sure, because the whole aim of this is for this number to go up. So great, thank you, everyone. So we'll just get into it now. So firstly, we just wanted to distinguish between weather and climate. I think this is one of those things that a lot of people do confuse. So essentially, weather describes the conditions that are outside right now. So we can use words like, it is sunny outside, it is rainy, any of those terms is what describes weather. Climate, on the other hand, describes the conditions in a region expected at a particular time of the year. So it's specific to a region as well as specific to any time of the year. So that said, what then is climate change? So essentially, climate change is a long-term change in the average weather patterns that have come to define the Earth's local, regional, and global conditions. So changes have been observed in climate since the early 20th century. So that's, I guess, the 1900s. And these changes have been driven by human activities primarily. So I'll go into it in the next slide. But then essentially, human activities have led to an increase in heat trapping greenhouse gases, for example, carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere, raising the average Earth temperature above what it's supposed to be. So as you can see on this slide here, activities like this include burning fossil fuels. So an example of this is burning coal, gas, oil, and these release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Things like deforestation, so cutting down trees. So essentially, we know that trees are supposed to help us by absorbing carbon dioxide through photosynthesis. So if we then cut down trees, there is more carbon dioxide left in the atmosphere as there's less trees to absorb it at the end. Then thirdly, we have dumping waste in landfills. So the process of decomposition of waste produces gases like methane, which traps heat. So methane, for example, traps 6 times more heat than carbon dioxide does. So it's even worse. Then finally, we've got agricultural practices that also lead to the release of such gases, for example, nitrogen oxide, as well as methane. For example, the cows that people breed in different regions, basically cows will eat what they eat, and then they secrete gas, which will have gases like methane at the end of it, which all contributes to global warming. So now I'll just pass on to Phil, who will go a bit more into the details of that.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. I think it's worth remembering what the greenhouse effect is all about. And I'm sure that everybody in the room will have come across this term, perhaps in their school days. The greenhouse effect is great. It's really valuable. It's really important. We wouldn't actually be on this planet if it wasn't for the greenhouse effect. And it's important to know that, because the whole point of the greenhouse effect is that in the atmosphere, gases trap in energy that comes from the sun. On other planets like Mars and Venus and so on, the heat bounces off the planet, it escapes extremely quickly, but because of the type of atmosphere we have, it keeps in the energy, and that has resulted in the kind of life and the range of the biodiverse life that we have on this planet. life has changed. It's been different over the millennia. We currently have human beings on this planet, which is great for us. But slight changes in the atmosphere really does affect how strong that greenhouse effect is. And we've seen, because of the increase in carbon dioxide and indeed a whole load of other similar gases that increase the effect of that greenhouse effect, temperatures have been increasing on the planet. If you want to move to the next slide. Temperatures have gone up and down on the planet many times. They're always changing, as we know. We're familiar with the fact that over millennia there have been various ice ages, there have been warm periods, and so on. But the kind of changes have taken thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years just to change an odd degree centigrade at a time. Whereas we can clearly see a rapid, incredibly rapid, unprecedented, rapid change in temperature, which is linked directly to the amount of carbon dioxide and other gases that have increased in our atmosphere, which is directly linked to, very clearly, the activities that we have had as human beings since we industrialized energy and industrialized agriculture and increased at rapid rates in terms of our population. And that's particularly been the case over this last century. And it's just been going up and up all the time. And there are clear consequences. Next slide. And we're increasingly aware of those consequences. We're increasingly aware of them, not just because we're watching more telly, which maybe is one factor. It's because these things are happening more and more frequently and to a greater extent. One of the significant things with a rise in temperature around the planet is, obviously, we have warmer days. That's obvious, isn't it? But one of the other consequences, almost sort of contradictory to that, is that because of warmer temperatures, more water is evaporated from the seas and rivers and so on. And therefore we end up with more rainfall. And because the clouds are more substantial, that rainfall is much more dramatic, much heavier rain. And I think most of us have seen this. And of course, those impacts, whilst many of them, as we'll see in a moment, relate to us here in Swansea directly, when we see much heavier rainfall, when we see much hotter days. It doesn't always feel like it, I know, but you know, some of our summers have been getting much hotter and breaking previous records all the time. But of course, it's what's happening elsewhere around the world as well that does have an impact on us. If you look at that bottom picture there, that could be anywhere in the world, couldn't it? Really, a farm which is suffering from a drought episode. That food may be for local people, but of course we import a huge amount of our food from places all around the world. So even where different communities and societies are being impacted in other parts of the world, it can have an impact on us as well. Next slide. And here's just an example. It's now becoming an annual thing, isn't it? That one or two or more communities within Wales, somewhere within Wales, are suffering badly from flooding every single year. It just keeps on coming and keeps on coming. Where I live, I haven't directly impacted it, had that impact yet. I do notice the heavier rain, but I haven't suffered from massive floods. I can only imagine what it must be like for people in certain communities within Wales whose lives have been absolutely devastated by flooding, and in some cases flooding one year and then just a couple of years later, even with additional flood defences in place, flooded again and their homes totally ruined. They can't get insurance and all of these kinds of things. Next slide. And where is it leading? Well, interestingly enough, this picture, this image, was created by what was then known as the Environment Agency. It's now actually called Natural Resources Wales, which is the sort of government body, if you like, that deals with environmental issues within Wales. They created this sort of model, plotted this, it must be about 10 years ago now, or maybe more, where they plotted a trajectory for if things continue as the way that they are at the moment in terms of temperature rise around the globe, the melting of ice caps and glaciers, we would see a sea level rise that would have a huge impact on coastal cities and towns all around the world, including Swansea itself, where within the lifetime, perhaps of even my own children, and certainly any grandchildren that I, touch wood, may have in the future, it may well be in their lifetime that huge areas of Swansea, which are, if you know those parts of Swansea, are very recently developed and are continuing to be developed with lots of housing around the marina area and SA1, will actually be inundated by the sea because of the amount of sea level rise. And of course, that won't just happen in 80 years on a particular day on the 1st of January. There's a progression, isn't there? So, 10 years from now, there'll be some impact from this. 20 years from now, more impact. 40 years from now. And some of this is now out of our control. Some of the impacts are going to happen anyway. And it's more about, whether we've got the will and the ability to adapt the way that we live and the way that we do things to deal with the inevitable changes that we are facing in the future. I think we're going back to you now, Kim.
Yeah, I guess just following on from what you were saying before, I think, in the third picture where it was the crops that were very dry, I'm following on from that. And even I think the conversation you were having with Saskia earlier about the Malawian fair trade farmer that came to your climate justice event. Essentially, there's people out there already feeling these effects of climate change, even though maybe we, at the moment, I guess, are fortunate enough, in a sense, to not be yet. Other people are already suffering. And it's especially, countries that are already more vulnerable and just, suffering through other things already, I guess. So essentially, even on this map of Africa, you can see countries like Lesotho, Swaziland, Zimbabwe, Malawi, I think South Sudan and Somalia are the worst affected by drought. And essentially the cause of it is climate change has resulted in decreased lengths of wet seasons, but also at the same time, a slight increase in heavy rainfall over a very short period of time. So just the conditions themselves have become unsuitable for crop production and have resulted in less yields and less food security for the farmers in those areas. So people are already suffering at the moment. And, it's just a shame that most of it has started in the most deprived regions of the world. Next slide, please. Unfortunately as well, I guess, as human beings, I guess maybe we've been wired to not take responsibility, and instead of taking ownership, it's just easier to pass the blame on to others. thinking that maybe what we are doing is insignificant, or whatever else that we can do at the moment will not make a difference. But I guess the main thing here is we are trying to just say no action is too small. We can actually make a difference, and there is something that can be done about this. But before we do go into that, Phil, I guess we'll just take you into just looking at the effects on an individual level.
Yeah, thanks. I imagine that many of you have heard the term ecological footprint or carbon footprint, and that's just the term which relates to how we can measure the impact that we as an individual or as a country have on the planet by calculating, looking at the activities that we undertake, whether it be eating, traveling, using energy, and so on, and working out how much that contributes to the carbon emissions and the additional global warming that we are seeing. It's very interesting to note that one of the excuses on that previous slide that people sometimes give about inaction on our part is to point at larger countries like America and China and India, and there's absolutely no doubt at all that as a country, these are big countries, they have a much bigger impact than, say, Wales has on the planet. But the very fact that they are big countries with huge populations, that is the reason why, as a country, they are having this huge impact. If you actually look at the impact that people are having on an individual basis, on average across Wales, or on average across America, or on average across China or India, it won't take you long to actually realize that a typical European person, a typical American person, actually has a footprint, has an impact on the planet, which is several times bigger than any average person within China or average person within India. And as soon as you talk about someone typical, if there is such a term, an average person within Africa, for example, it is a relative to Europeans and Americans, it is almost negligible. We also sometimes, if you just go back to that last one, it's not time for a break yet. If you, another way of looking at carbon footprints is, once you've calculated it, is working out, okay, right, my carbon footprint is X. If everybody in the world had the same kind of lifestyle as me, how would that work out? And it's been calculated that if everybody in the world had a lifestyle similar and used the same kind of resources and so on as the average person within Wales, we would actually physically need 2.5 planet Earths to accommodate the resources needed to meet everybody's needs. If everybody lived the same way as an average person within Ethiopia, and I know there are extremely rich people in Ethiopia and a lot of very poor people, or people living on very modest lifestyles within Ethiopia. If everybody in the world lived that way, we wouldn't even need a whole planet. We'd be living well within our means. And so across the globe, one of the things that people who are championing this kind of work are trying to do is to move us towards being one planet communities. And that is a goal of the Welsh government, for example, to try and move us from being a 2.5 planet country to being a 1 planet country. I thought I'd just mention that idea. So next slide. And at this point, it just seems really nice to have a cuppa. And in fact, if we were, meeting up physically down at the Environment Centre or at Kai's property or whatever, maybe this would be a really good time to have a break. But the reason we put this on the screen is just to try and illustrate, as it said on that last slide, if you read it, that everything that we do has some kind of impact on the environment. So I'd like everyone now just to put their minds to this. You may want to click unmute as well, and just focus in on that picture of that very tempting cup of tea. One of the simplest, and for many of us, most enjoyable activities of the day. An afternoon cup of tea. Mine's an Earl Grey, by the way, with milk. Very odd. In what way would I, having that cup of tea, be interacting with the environment?
Wow.
Anybody got any suggestions?
Wow.
Saskia, give us a couple of things.
Ooh, I'm thinking about the farmer who farmed the tea leaves.
Okay. So we can't see the tea leaves. They're probably at the bottom of the cup, but yes, tea leaves have been involved. They've been farmed. And yes, a good point. It's not just about the environment, but it's actually about the people as well. We've interacted with the people. Anything else, Saskia?
I'm thinking about the kettle that I boiled for just one cup of tea.
How did you manage to boil that kettle?
Yeah, electricity.
Okay. So the energy. And when energy was produced, maybe it came from a renewable source, maybe the wind, that would be great. But we still have a lot of our energy coming from coal and gas-powered power stations, don't we? Anybody else got any other things that come to mind when we look at that cup of tea?
Phil, there's a couple of things in the chat. So Garrett Gethin has mentioned the electrical demand of boiling the kettle, and he's mentioned the dairy farms to actually get the milk. And
Kim mentioned earlier about the impact that cows can have on climate change and global warming. Methane, which they actually, it comes out both ends, but particularly from their mouths, burping cows contribute methane, which is a significant global warming gas. Alfio has his hand up.
I was thinking about everything going through the manufacturing of the bags themselves, or the cartons in which the tea is contained, or also the ceramic. So it's very important, of the cup, of whatever the cup is made of. So that's, other industries moving.
And there's the spoon there, the metal industry, which is extremely highly energy intensive as well. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah. Anybody else got any other observations?
Gethin also said questionable sugar plain plantations. And Anthony's got his hand up, so he's got a couple of things to say.
Anthony.
Yeah, so I initially put the transportation of the milk and the tea bags, but what additionally came to me was the waste from the milk bottle, whether it be most milk bottles that are plastic, so that could be a major contributing factor.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. That's a few good points there. An interesting one from Shihab, or is it from Shihab, or were you on somebody else's?
Shihab.
Yeah. So that was a really good one. I've lost it now. Sorry. Who's got in the chat?
Shihab said cutting forests to plant.
Oh yes, of course, because it's not just about the emissions that we create, but it's about reducing the opportunities for nature to deal with that pollution. And as Kim mentioned earlier, the cutting down of forests, which is hasn't just been phenomenal over the years, is still, as we are sitting here talking now, is still going on at an incredible rate in order to create space, not just for feeding us, but more so for feeding livestock, like the cows that were mentioned earlier. You know, we're cutting down rainforests in order to grow soy and other crops to feed livestock, to give us milk and beef and so on. We've got a couple more hands up. Alfio?
So yes, now that we are talking about, you know, the forests, I thought it would be very interesting to bring about a point with regards to trendy diets nowadays. So I'm not mentioning any creed here, but there are a lot of products that are becoming trendy. I would say among all of them, quinoa, for example, quinoa seeds, for example, avocados. Well, all these kind of feed into this broader idea of deforestation, it's technically called. And you know, the very fact that some people think, okay, I switch to this diet because I think it's better for the environment, actually is not true, because most of these products obviously that are used extensively in, say, in the West, they come from places like Latin America, for example. And they, first of all, they don't come to us by just walking or by charts. So they come to us through, you know, by flight, by planes, but also they increase the consumption of meat because obviously the price of that local product will increase in that place to the extent to which meats will be cheaper than that actual, you know, endemic product in there. So that's very important. You know, I think lifestyle, diet is another very important topic. Sorry about that, but.
No, I think that's a really good point, and it does raise as well the difficulty that people sometimes have, thinking that they may be doing the right thing. They're wanting to move in a certain direction, perhaps for health reasons, or moving away from one type of product, and then only find out subsequently that the alternative that they've chosen may not be good either. It isn't easy, but that shouldn't be an excuse to give up on trying to make good choices. We'll just take a point maybe from Anthony, and we ought to move on. You have your hand up, Anthony. Was that from before, or did you have?
Oh, that was from before. Yeah, that was from before.
That's great. And I know a few people have also added some suggestions within the chat. Perhaps we could go on to the next slide, and I've just tried to illustrate some of the things which I think pretty much have been covered there, from the human impact that we have on people we rely on from all parts of the world, producers. When you're talking about huge plantations like tea plantations, the pressure that puts on water and space is quite incredible, which has an impact on local people, of course. And it also can have a major impact on biodiversity, wildlife, the very things that we are very much sort of interlinked with around the world, particularly if pesticides and artificial composters and so on are used to fertilize these major huge plantations. We've got all the storing, all the transportation, all the processes around packaging and things like that. I don't think we did actually mention the water, of course, in the kettle, as well as heating the water. The water itself in this country goes through quite a process, which involves a lot of pumping, a lot of purification and things like that. And all of that involves a lot of energy, huge networks of piping, which all involves construction, maintenance, and again, energy and so on. And I think somebody mentioned the materials for the cup, and I mentioned the spoon, and quarrying obviously is a large impact. So even when we just look at a simple task like having a cup of tea, it's worth just remembering that we are connected to people and the planet, you know, throughout the world. And a simple activity like that, albeit relatively small contributions, does contribute to climate change and to the degradation of our planet. Next slide.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add that Jason
Yeah.
in the chat that Did you say 100 million cups of tea every single day, apparently, in the
Yeah,
UK alone? So that's
yeah,
a lot of tea.
yeah. I don't know how many in Wales, but it was a stat I found out months ago, which I found very out there. Like there's like 100 million cups of tea being drunk in the UK each day. So
Yeah.
I ought to say, I suppose, that the purpose of these two slides here was not to discourage you from drinking tea, but it's really just to illustrate, you know, that link, and that we can't sort of point the finger elsewhere. We do have some responsibility with the decisions that we make each day, and whilst it's not really possible for us to you know, make calculations about our carbon impacts before we put the kettle on, before we get out of bed, before we do anything, we can't be doing that. But you know, if in a general way we take on board that we have an impact and that we can do something about it to reduce our impact, I think that is, you know, the first step on the way, really.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Really interesting, Jason. Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess the conversation has just led nicely to, you know, now that we know just the impacts that our individual actions, you know, even in something as small as making up the tea are, what can we actually do? So right now, I'll just invite, you know, everyone to just have a chat, really. Let's just discuss what we think, you know, we can do as individuals or just collectively as well, to reduce some of these effects that we've seen and heard of today. So feel free, anyone, everyone, to just unmute yourself and yeah, just fire away.
Yeah, I can go first. I think the first, apart from the conversations that we obviously had before about, you know, the shopping bags and all of that stuff, I think the most simple way really is to like plan our meals, because if you see it in stores, you know how much like waste there is and stuff like that. And I don't know about some of you, but I sometimes I'm overzealous saying, oh, I'm going to be healthy this week, I'm going to buy all these vegetables and I don't eat them, or oh, I'm going to, like, you know, plan my eat all this meat, I don't eat it, I end up throwing it away, and that's just energy that's really being used that I'm just wasting out there. So I think that's just one way of us being, like, you know, more responsible ourselves for, you know, like planning ahead so we do reduce the amount of waste we are putting out there by just planning ahead, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh,
I
that's
think that's
excellent point. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks. For me, I made the choice to not buy new clothing. So I signed up 2 years ago for the slow fashion movement, and this wasn't planned, but this is something I got from eBay. The people who go out for an evening and then they feel that they can't be Instagrammed with the same dress the next week or the next month. And that's my luck. So I buy quality clothing. I have a few brands that I follow on eBay, and you know, it just makes sense because I know how much water is being used to produce one t-shirt and one jeans, and that really opened my eyes. So I'm a second-hand clothing lady, but hopefully it doesn't show too much.
So you always look lovely.
Not at all. And I think as well, one other thing that helps sometimes with making these decisions is there are core benefits to it. If we think about food, having maybe more green choices is generally healthier and sometimes can be cheaper. I guess it depends, as well as what Joy is saying, pre-planning. That is also, that makes things cheaper as well, because sometimes if for example she buys things in bulk, maybe if it's dry things in bulk, it is cheaper. So, you know, there are core benefits to taking certain actions. So it's not only then the environment that benefits your pocket as well as, you know, your heart maybe in future will also thank you. So yeah.
I think Anthony's got his hand up.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, it's in relation to the food consumption really, and it kind of ties in with what I do, which is work in the fitness industry. What tends to happen is Jamaican saying, your eyes bigger than your belly. So basically, when you're looking to make a meal or dish up food, you dish up too much. Then what happens is there's a number of things that happen. One of them is that we eat too much as a result of that and stretch our stomachs. So the next time we eat more, which causes us to gain weight. But then also the leftover food, what do we do with it? We put it in the bin. So one of the good things to do, if one finds himself having dished up too much food, don't eat till you're bloated for a start. And secondly, there's no shame in covering the food up and saving it till later. And even that, if you did that, that's going to cut out snacks you may have in a day and save you some money as well and save you some calories. Another thing that I do is, and it could be a small thing, could be a big thing, but if I'm in one room, I'll make sure all the plug sockets and everything's switched off in the other room. I'm not sure what difference it makes, but something that occurred to me was if you've got like an extension in with a light on it and nothing's on, the electricity is still going somewhere to power the light that comes on to show that electricity is thrown through. So I generally just turn all the lights, the plug sockets off. But on a funny note, I was doing my washing machine and it was, for some reason, it was causing water to enter the washing machine and just absolute disaster. Don't do it on your washing machine, but on other appliances, it's definitely worth it. Save a bit of money as well.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Anthony.
Sure, no problems.
Anyone else? I can share one of the things that I do is when you go shopping, I try to buy the fresh produce instead of, the packaged, overpackaged, plasticky, massive stuff that little things come in. You buy in like a little piece of garlic and it comes in all this like plastic packaging. So try to buy the fresh produce and use my reusable bags. Right. Oh,
yes.
Phil.
Yeah, can I throw my one in? Some fantastic suggestions there, and I'd love to sort of follow up on some of the comments, but I know time is going. I just want to throw in one which is really big in my mind and work at the moment is around transport. Transport in the UK is the third biggest contributor to carbon emissions, following on from like industry and housing, heating and things in housing. And it is a big one. And over this last year, for reasons that we maybe didn't expect, a lot of us haven't been doing the traveling that we may have done in the past. And I think it's given us the opportunity just to reconsider the amount of travel that we do. I'm desperate to go and travel more at the moment. And I think we do need to, get out and travel a little bit more to go and see some people and things like this. But, working at home more is something that I normally would do anyway, largely. But a lot of people have been working from home more, which is great. And a lot of people, I think, have been getting out, walking and cycling more, and maybe seeing that those are options that can be taken as an alternative to using the car. And I think personally, I'm going to make more effort over this coming months as we start getting back to things to use public transport more than I have been in recent years. So that's just my little take on this.
Yeah, thank you, Phil.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah,
hi. Yeah, I'm good. Hi, how are you doing? My name is Ala, and I'm from Sudan. I'm in Swansea now at the School of Medicine. So I remember like 9 years ago when I was in university in my country, I was thinking to doing a device to reduce the carbon dioxide in the air by neutralize the carbon dioxide to carbon and oxygen, and then recycling carbon to use carbon to use in anything like just to reduce or to improve the climate change or something like this. This personally maybe I'm going to do this invention in the future, maybe. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. Good luck with
Right.
that. Thanks for sharing that. Really interesting.
You're welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. Do you have an idea, Ala, of what that device would be? Is it like a vacuum? Is it? It's
Yeah,
very interesting.
it is a chemical device. It use some chemical materials to neutralize the carbon dioxide. Do you know carbon dioxide is component from carbon and oxygen? And then to neutralize the carbon and oxygen. Oxygen just go to earth. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
But it's a problem
Like a carbon filter.
Yeah, it's carbon. It's a problem in a carbon.
Wow.
Just I'm talking about my field. Basically, I'm invention man, and I have many innovations. Like basically, I'm working in a medical devices, but also any invention man or person working in innovations. Like maybe sometimes you have some innovation in a medical, in a chemical, physicals, anything. Yeah. So I hope I will do that in a good.
Wow, good luck.
Yeah.
We'll be looking to you, Ala.
Thank you very much.
Right. Get back onto the.
Thanks, Saskia. Thank you.
Bye, Saskia.
Okay. Great contributions, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing that. Amna, if you can just share the presentation again.
Yeah. Sorry.
So I'll just now quickly go through a few things that we had done about what people can do on an individual basis. I think most of it is what we've already spoken about here, but just quickly. Okay, thanks, Amna. So firstly, I guess, our main thing is just for us as individuals to always stay educated. I think people should put more of an effort to be aware of what's going on around them and just educate yourself about the things that are going on and just even initiatives that you can get involved in. And as well as Phil said, be conscious of your carbon footprint and just little things that we're doing on a daily basis that are affecting this. So an example of this, I think Anthony gave his example of, just switching off sockets, for example. It could also be switching off lights in rooms that you're not using, replacing your light bulbs with LED ones, which actually are cheaper in terms of, the energy usage. Things like taking shorter showers, using cold water to wash your clothes. Those sort of things are things that, we can do, which seem quite small, but will actually have a great impact on the environment. Then as well, things to do with reducing waste. I think Joy gave the example of shopping, being more conscious about how she shops, but also using things like recycling bags to recycle. I think the council provides, green bags, pink bags, all of these things, using those bags that are provided for free to just separate your waste, for example. Next slide, please, Anna. Then just moving on to diets, which we briefly touched on already. I think cutting down on meat is just generally, one of the big things that we can do. No, you don't necessarily have to go vegetarian if you don't want to, but I think just being more conscious about the amount of meat we are consuming, because we've heard so much just about how much is taken by cows, just breeding cows, for example, and just the impact that has on the environment. So just being more plant-based as well, not only is it plant-friendly, but there is core benefits, like I mentioned before, things like reduced risk of cardiovascular diseases and things like type 2 diabetes, which are sadly more prevalent in ethnically diverse groups. Then there's things like, shopping locally as opposed to buying things that maybe have been imported. Alfio gave that example of, things like certain avocados grown in Latin America being transported to here. Instead, if we just make the conscious decision of shopping things that are homegrown, that does actually make, you know, a very big difference. Then in terms of shopping, Saskia gave us a lovely example about, you know, just buying secondhand if you can, embracing as well just what we own, and if it means mending things, just enhancing your DIY skills, basically. Next slide, please. Then, you know, the one about walking more, driving less, avoiding unnecessary travel, for example, taking one trip all at once, maybe. So just putting all your errands together, maybe in one day, to avoid you having to take the bus maybe 5 times a week when you can do it 2 times a week, for example. And then making your voice heard. So Phil will touch on this in the next few slides.
Yeah, some great suggestions there from the whole group, and largely around individual actions. But I think it's important as well to note that there are lots that we can do collectively. So as an organisation, obviously, you know, CAE is discussing this at the moment, how it can make a difference. And this is one way it can make a difference, by actually organising events like this to raise awareness and encourage others to take action, and also the way it runs its office and things like that. But also within our own communities, either geographic communities or communities of interest, whether you go to you know, a place of worship or whatever it might be, within those communities or a neighborhood, there are lots of things that can be done, perhaps around you know, taking care of nature and being more in tune with nature, growing your own things together. There are some great projects around Swansea that demonstrate that. Getting involved with recycling, repair and reuse. The repair cafes have started up again now, just this last weekend at the Environment Centre, where you can take things and have things repaired for free, which is amazing. And you can maybe learn some you know, tips and things like that about how to do your own mending and so on. And lots of people, particularly over this last year, we've seen, haven't we, loads of people getting out and doing litter picks and things like this. Sadly, we've seen the opposite as well. When lockdowns have opened up, we've seen people dashing down to the beach and things like this, and some people being very careless and just leaving horrendous litter and things like this. But, you know, as communities, we can take responsibility to look after things. You'll probably be aware, for example, the tragic riot that took place a few days ago up in May Hill. But wasn't it wonderful to see the reaction of the community over the following few days, all coming together along with council staff to try and clear up the mess that was created. And that kind of community action is really valuable. And of course, sharing information and ideas and getting together to organise events that may be linked in some way to reducing our impact or improving our impact on the environment. And one last slide I wanted to sort of raise awareness about is that it's maybe not just about what we do individually and collectively. There are some things that are kind of out of our control anyway, or that others are better placed to deal with. And so I think it's really important as well to recognise that we all can influence and support others to make changes, whether that's our family and friends and neighbours and so on, to spread what maybe has been discussed today, discuss that with others in our circles, but also when we get the opportunity to communicate with councillors and other community leaders, to tell them that what you consider to be important and what things you think ought to be done by the council and others. And when consultations and surveys are done, recently the council put out a big survey all about climate change and what it should do. And almost 1,000 people in just a few weeks actually responded to that consultation. They were shocked. It just illustrated how much interest there is out there within Swansea about these issues. And it would be great to continue that. They've asked if I can help them to work with groups that maybe were not represented all that much within that survey. And so, you know, I'm hoping that more opportunities will come to have these kind of consultations and get people involved in sharing their views about this. And some of you may even want to take the step to get involved in some campaigns and protests. You might want to go out on the street, or you might want to sign letters or campaigns online on Facebook and things like this. And also, of course, giving support to local groups, community groups that are out there trying to do their bit, whether it be community transport, whether it be community food growing, whatever it might be, repairs and things like that, to lend your support, whether that's giving a little bit of time sometimes, whether it's just saying thank you, whether it's giving a donation and so on. So, you know, if we can support others, as well as taking our own action, we can multiply the amount of difference that is made.
Okay, so we're coming to the end of our session now. So sorry, everyone, we've slightly run over, but just going back to the initial question that we had, now that we've gone through the session, please just raise your fingers as to how confident you now feel about your understanding and any actions that you can take. And if it has increased, please feel free, if you wanna just share. 5, amazing. Alfia, that's a 5. Izzy?
I wouldn't want to say 5 because that means I'm a student. I'm still learning. I've still got a lot of literacy to go through. A lot of learning. So I will stick to 4 for now, and it's still a long way to 5.
Still amazing. I think, you know, the thing is, you know, we should just keep on learning, and I think we can never be too informed. So great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for sharing that. So I just wanted to share just the things that we have coming up over the next few months. So we will have soon, I think by next week, we should have a little pick in collaboration with our CTP project. So that's Isra and Colin. Then in June, we're hoping for it to be the Waste Month. So this will be in collaboration with both the Environment Center as well as the council. So we will have one other event as well as a visit to the Environment Center and as well to the recycling sites. So if anyone is interested in any of these, please just let us know. I think we do have all your details anyway, but it would be really great to have everyone really involved in this. Then in July, we're hoping for it to be our Nature Month, so just enjoying wildlife and nature, then having a dig and plant day as well as visits to community gardens. And then our sort of big final event would be in August, but more details about all of this will follow. And then, yes, Izzy.
Just to mention as well that if there is any events where it involves us being somewhere, the community transport will be more than happy to come and get anyone that's here in this meeting, or the people that are left, or any new participants, to pick them up and take them to events or take them to, you know, where you need us to be.
Great, thanks, Izzy.
Welcome.
So just to round off, just remember, I guess, you know, if there's anyone listening you can take from this, just remember that no action is too small. We are not insignificant. Every single thing that we do does count. So whatever change that you can make will contribute for the better. So these are just our details. Again, if you don't already have them, if you scan this QR code, it will just take you straight to our website, just for more information as to what we have going on, other things, just other projects we have running as well. I'm going to stop screen sharing. And then if anyone has questions, anything to add, please feel free.
Well, thank you, Phil and Kim, for delivering that session. It was really interesting to learn these things and learn how we can help out. I guess if people want to still linger around, if anyone's got any questions, feel free to ask.
I was just going to say on a note of what we can do. I think there's a saying that there's a job that anyone could do, but nobody did it, so it never got done. So even what we've learned today, what we know, just to pass it on to others, it may plant the seed, may make them think twice about doing certain activities. But to sit and think, I'm only me, I'm only an individual, I can't do anything. It's that little thing we could say to someone, a bit of advice, information we could share, could make a change. That person could share the information, and so on and so forth. I mean, if it wasn't for other activities like this taking place, probably this topic wouldn't even appeal to us. But somewhere along the line, in our life, consciously or subconsciously, the aspect of climate change has been brought to us, and as a result, has made us come to this room here. So every little counts in a nutshell.
Yeah. And just on that note, thank you everybody for your participation. We've put a little feedback form in the chat. I'll repaste the link in there. If you could fill them out for us at some point, that would be amazing, just so we can know how it went, what you learned, and just how we can improve in future. So if everybody could fill that out at some point, the link is in the chat now.
Sure.
Thank you. And I'll probably just email them out because I can remember who came. So I'll just email them out, follow up. Yeah, it was really interesting to hear everybody's contributions. Really, really exciting to see everyone's faces as well. So
can I just say thank you actually to people, because I find it extremely rewarding and genuinely useful to have interaction from people in this way. I think it's very encouraging, and yeah, I'll be mentioning this conversation to other colleagues.
Oh, we appreciate it, Phil.
Thank you so much, Phil.
Thank you. So if no one's got anything else, that is it from us.
Okay, no problem.
I hope you will have a really nice day. Sun is shining. Take care of your health.
Hope to see you all again before too long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, yeah, bye.
Oh, well, how did you feel about that?
Okay, let me just stop the recording.
Stop recording.